Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a returning visitor, we want to make sure you feel right at home. Today, we have something special for you, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. We're excited to share this journey with you, and we hope you'll find inspiration, joy, and connection as we move forward. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's dive in. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting videos. And if you'd like to show your support, hit that super thanks button. It really helps us keep bringing you great content. Let's dive in. In a time when the world seems to be descending into chaos, many have looked to prophecy for guidance, hope, and understanding. One such prophet was Marie-Julie Jahenny, a French mystic whose visions have echoed through history, offering both warnings and a promise of redemption. Her life and messages, steeped in devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, reveal a powerful story of faith, purification, and ultimate victory over evil. Today, we dive into the extraordinary prophecies of Marie-Julie Jahenny and her vision of the end times, a journey through suffering toward a glorious renewal. Marie-Julie Jahenny, a French mystic and stigmatist, became renowned for her prophecies concerning the end times, which were steeped in themes of destruction, purification, and renewal. She emphasized that the suffering of the world was not an arbitrary consequence, but rather a necessary step in the divine plan, a purification of humanity and the Church before the ultimate victory of God and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Her visions, which she believed were divinely inspired, revealed a period of intense trial and tribulation for both the world and the faithful. But they also foretold a final triumph of good over evil, peace, and spiritual renewal. Central to her understanding of these prophetic times was the role of the Virgin Mary, whose Immaculate Heart was destined to bring about this ultimate victory. Marie-Julie Jahenny's visions of the end times were marked by cataclysmic events, including natural disasters, war, famine, and widespread suffering. These chastisements, or divine punishments, would befall the world as a consequence of mankind's sinfulness and spiritual apathy. In particular, she placed much emphasis on the role of France, which she saw as the eldest daughter of the Church, warning that the country would face severe trials due to its moral decay. The chastisements would extend beyond France, affecting the entire world, especially as secularism, atheism, and materialism were spreading across Europe and the wider globe. However, these chastisements were not to be viewed as cruel or meaningless. Rather, Jahenny depicted them as a necessary purification. She believed that the divine retribution was meant to purify humanity, to strip away the falsehoods and idols that had taken root, and to restore the true worship of God. In her view, these times of suffering were an opportunity for the faithful to repent and turn back to God, to rid themselves of their sinful ways and return to lives of holiness. For Jahenny, this purification was essential for the ultimate victory of God and the establishment of His kingdom on earth. The severity of the chastisements was meant to awaken the world from its spiritual slumber, drawing people to repentance and encouraging them to embrace the teachings of the Church. While the tribulations would be intense, they were not without hope. Jahenny emphasized that the purification would eventually lead to the restoration of the Church and the triumph of good over evil. A central aspect of Marie-Julie Jahenny's prophecies is the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This theme closely mirrors the message of the apparitions at Fatima, in which the Virgin Mary promised that her Immaculate Heart would triumph over the forces of evil. Jahenny, like the children of Fatima, was deeply devoted to the Virgin Mary and viewed her as a central figure in the salvation of humanity. The Immaculate Heart of Mary was seen as a symbol of purity, holiness, and maternal love, and it was through this heart that God's final victory would be achieved. For Jahenny, the Immaculate Heart of Mary would serve as the guiding force through the trials and tribulations of the end times. The Virgin Mary would protect the faithful, offering them strength and comfort during the difficult times ahead. Through her Immaculate Heart, the faithful could find refuge, solace, and ultimately, victory. This heart, untouched by sin, was the means by which the world would be purified and brought back into alignment with God's will. Jahenny's emphasis on the Immaculate Heart of Mary was not just spiritual or symbolic. She believed that the Virgin Mary's triumph would be a real, tangible event that would change the course of history. After the world had been purified through chastisements, a new era of peace and spiritual renewal would follow. This era would be characterized by a return to the true faith, a deep devotion to the Holy Mother, and the reign of Christ the King. Marie-Julie Jahenny, a French mystic and visionary of the 19th and early 20th centuries, is known for her detailed prophecies concerning the end times. Unlike many apocalyptic visions that focus solely on the catastrophic nature of the final days, Jahenny's prophecies present a dual narrative, one of destruction and suffering, and the other of redemption and ultimate triumph. In her visions, the tribulations humanity would endure wars, natural disasters, societal breakdowns are not ends in themselves, but part of a divine purification process. This purification, although harsh and difficult, is necessary for preparing the world for the return of Christ and the eventual establishment of his reign. Central to Jahenny's vision is the belief that these trials, while severe, would ultimately lead to the victory of good over evil. The suffering endured by humanity is seen as a cleansing process, stripping away sin and evil from the world. Jahenny saw this as part of God's plan for the restoration of the Church and the establishment of his kingdom on earth. The final resolution to these tribulations would be the triumph of Christ, the King, which would bring about a period of peace, holiness, and spiritual renewal. This period of peace, often referred to as the reign of Christ, would be marked by the flourishing of the Church, which would be purified and free from the corruption and division that have historically plagued it. A defining feature of Jahenny's prophecies is the role of the Virgin Mary, particularly her Immaculate Heart, in these end times. Jahenny emphasized that devotion to Mary, especially through the daily recitation of the Rosary and consecration to her Immaculate Heart, would be crucial for the faithful to endure the coming tribulations. The Immaculate Heart of Mary, in Jahenny's vision, acts as a powerful source of protection and comfort for the faithful. Through Mary's intercession, the faithful could find spiritual strength to persevere through the trials and receive guidance in remaining true to the faith. Jahenny's messages were clear in that devotion to Mary would provide a refuge for those who were committed to remaining faithful during the dark times to come. At the heart of her apocalyptic vision, however, is the rise of evil forces that would seek to lead humanity astray. Jahenny prophesied the coming of the false prophet and the Antichrist, who would exert great influence over the world. These figures, who would claim spiritual authority and deceive many, would lead the masses into error, away from the true faith. However, despite their apparent success and power, Jahenny was certain that these evil forces would not triumph in the end. The ultimate victory would belong to Christ and his kingdom, as the forces of evil would be vanquished. Jahenny believed that the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary would play a decisive role in this final victory. The defeat of the false prophet and the Antichrist would mark the end of the reign of evil, and the establishment of Christ's reign would follow. This reign would bring about a period of peace and holiness, where sin would no longer have a place in the world. The Church, purified and united, would shine forth in its true glory, and humanity would experience a time of grace and renewal, where the faithful would be drawn closer to God. In summary, Marie-Julie Jahenny's prophetic vision of the end times offers both a warning and a promise. While the tribulations that would precede the final victory would be severe and difficult, they would ultimately serve to purify the world and prepare it for the return of Christ. Through devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and faithful adherence to the teachings of the Church, the faithful could find both protection and strength. In the end, the forces of evil would be defeated, and Christ's reign would bring about a time of peace, holiness, and spiritual renewal for the faithful. Marie-Julie Jahenny's prophecies did not solely focus on the destruction and suffering that would come with the end times. They also pointed to a profound spiritual renewal. The period of chastisements, according to Jahenny, would be followed by a restoration of the Church, where the faithful would experience a deep spiritual awakening. This renewal would be characterized by a return to traditional Catholic practices, such as devotion to the sacraments, the Holy Eucharist, and the Rosary. Jahenny believed that the faithful, once purified through the tribulations of the end times, would once again embrace the fullness of the Catholic faith. At the heart of this spiritual renewal would be a re-establishment of the monarchy of Christ, the King, a reign in which Christ's laws and the teachings of the Church would guide society. This period would see the restoration of traditional values, including the sanctity of life, the importance of the family, and the dignity of human beings as created in the image of God. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary would usher in a new era of peace, where the reign of Christ would be acknowledged by all nations, and the faithful would experience a profound spiritual awakening. The victory of Christ the King, as envisioned by Jahenny, would be a time when the true faith would flourish once again. After the trials of the end times, there would be a great outpouring of grace, and the Church would emerge stronger than ever. The faithful, having endured the tribulations of the chastisements, would be spiritually renewed, and the light of Christ would shine once again across the earth. For Marie-Julie Jahenny, the key to surviving the trials of the end times and participating in the victory of the Immaculate Heart was a deep and abiding devotion to the Virgin Mary. She emphasized that the daily recitation of the Rosary and the consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary were essential practices for those who wished to be protected during the coming trials. Through these devotions, the faithful would be spiritually fortified and given the strength they needed to persevere through the suffering that would precede the triumph. Jahenny's emphasis on Marian devotion is consistent with the teachings of other Marian apparitions, such as Fatima, where the Virgin Mary herself urged the faithful to pray the Rosary and to consecrate themselves to her Immaculate Heart. For Jahenny, the Immaculate Heart of Mary was a source of protection, comfort, and strength, and it was through devotion to Mary that the faithful would find their way through the darkest times. By consecrating themselves to the Immaculate Heart, the faithful would be united to Mary in a special way, drawing upon her grace and protection during the trials of the end times. The Rosary, in particular, was seen as a powerful weapon against the forces of evil, a means of calling upon the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary and asking for her protection in times of trial. Marie-Julie Jahenny's prophecies regarding the end times, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the renewal of the Church offer a vision of both destruction and hope. While the world faces chastisements and suffering, Jahenny's messages assure the faithful that these trials will lead to the ultimate victory of good over evil and the establishment of Christ's reign on earth. The key to surviving these trials lies in devotion to the Virgin Mary, particularly through the Rosary and consecration to her Immaculate Heart. In the end, Jahenny's prophecies offer a message of hope and renewal, reminding the faithful that despite the trials ahead, the victory of God and His Holy Mother is assured. As we reflect on the powerful visions and messages of Marie-Julie Jahenny, we are reminded that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. Through devotion to the Virgin Mary and faith in God's plan, we can find the strength to endure and the courage to persevere. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart is assured, and with it, the promise of peace and spiritual renewal for the Church and the world. Let us turn to prayer, consecrating ourselves to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and trusting that, in the end, good will triumph over evil, and God's love will shine through all. May we remain faithful, steadfast, and filled with hope as we await the glorious victory of Christ the King. Thank you for watching. May the peace of Christ be with you.